Good evening, everyone, and thank you very much for joining the March 28th session of the Milton Warrant Committee. I'm pleased to welcome you. We have several guests this evening. I would ask those of you presenting, you are limited to 7 minutes in your presentations. Please identify yourselves for the minutes and for our clerk to get everything accurately. And please direct all comments and questions to the chair. Anyone not doing so will not be permitted to continue their discussion. We try to keep things orderly. We're polite, but I will cut you off. We have a great deal to do. Lynn, would you please take the roll?
Yes, we have George, Steve, Dave, Lorraine, Susanna, Kristen, Erin, Kathy, Emily, John from the Warrant Committee.
Excellent. Thank you very much. Thanks all for joining. I think we might take the agenda slightly out of order tonight and ratify our minutes from our meeting. We have the minutes from the 3/7 meeting and the 3/14 meeting. Are there any additions, deletions, alterations, et cetera, to any of those?
George?
Yeah.
On the 3/7 meeting?
Yep.
On the very last page, it references the next meeting will be January 10th.
Oh, right. Good catch. We have to change that. The next meeting would be 3/14.
I think it was was it 3/9? Do we have a meeting on the 9th?
We did, yes. Thanks for catching that, Kathy.
Okay, 3/9. Okay, so Lynn, can you make that change?
Will do.
Okay, any other changes? Thank you, Kathy, for catching that one.
Yep. No, looks good.
Okay, hearing none, Chair will entertain a motion to accept the meeting minutes of 3/7 with that change and 3/14 as presented.
So moved.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Thank you. Further discussion? Hearing none. Lynn, please take the roll. All in favor?
George,
Yes.
Steve,
Yes.
Dave,
Yes.
Lorraine,
Yes.
Susanna,
Yes.
Kristen,
Yes.
Erin,
Yes.
Kathy,
Yes.
Emily,
Yes.
and John.
Yes.
Thank you all.
Ohene is also a yes.
Oh, thank you, Ohene. Thank you. Glad you could join us. The next item of business is a discussion of electronic voting and electronic voting appropriation. We have our town moderator. Susan, is Susan here also? Or Bob, are you carrying the ball on this one?
I'm carrying the ball.
Okay. Hi, Katie. Yes, you have a question.
George, we're posted for a joint meeting with you. We have a quorum of the select board here, so we need to call to order.
Oh, I'm sorry.
We're going to take our minutes. So
Okay, go right ahead. Go right ahead.
It's 7:04. If we can call the select meeting to order, and I think it's just Arthur, Mike, and me who are here. But in our time,
Melinda's here too.
Oh, and Melinda's here. Okay, so we have 4 members here. So we're calling our meeting to order also. Thank you, George.
Okay, well, thank you. And we are honored to have our select board with us. Thank you for everything you do. Your commitment to the running of the town is impressive. And I don't know necessarily you get a lot of thanks for it, but on our behalf, we thank you because we understand. Anyway, Bob, you have the floor, Town Moderator Bob Hiss, to talk about the electronic voting article and electronic voting appropriation. So Bob, you have the floor. Take it away.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So in 2019, I formed a committee made up of 5 citizens to investigate what a number of towns in the Commonwealth have done, which is to either rent or purchase electronic voting equipment for use at the in-person town meetings. This is different than the Zoom electronic voting we have been doing. They came back with a favorable recommendation to propose it to town meeting to adopt it, but suggested at the time that the financial condition of the town might not have been able to afford it, and so recommended deferring until some future time when the select board and the warrant committee thought it was more affordable. After having now gone through, I believe it's 7 examples of electronic voting using the Zoom webinar technology, and the fact that this is continuing to gain momentum both in the open town meetings and the representative town meetings across the Commonwealth. I think there's over 30 towns, might be 35 towns at this point that have adopted it. I reconvened a subset of that group, and we obtained some quotes from the leading 3 vendors that the towns have adopted. They're called, I'm pronouncing it right, I think Meridan Technologies, Turning Point technologies and options technologies. We came back with the quotes. I had a meeting with the finance committee of the select board. I think it was in January, Mr. Zulus and Mr. Doyle. They asked some follow-up questions of me. So I went back and followed up on those. I queried the towns that had either rented or purchased across the Commonwealth. I got about a dozen responses back. There were only 2 towns that had changed their mind and not regretted, but did something different after having adopted the technology. The first was a town that had rented, and then after seeing some of the costs, decided to buy. And the second was a town that had purchased again, because the technology does expire after a certain amount of time. So with that, our subcommittee put together a worst case, best case, and expected case analysis, which I submitted to the clerk, your clerk, last week, that identifies in the worst case, what if we had a 5-night town meeting and a 2-night fall and another 2-night winter, so 9 nights a year of town meeting, and a best case of like 1 night in the annual and 1 night in the fall and no winter, and then an expected case, 3, 2, and 0 for a total of 5. And then use the quotes we'd receive from the most expensive of the rental and procurement options and laid out this analysis for you. And so what you can see is in the worst case, the first year cost is about 20 grand to lay out the equipment in the first year. And then over the next group of years is 20 grand per year. This is on rentals. So it could cost 100 grand a year to rent. And then in the best case, it would cost to own about 13 grand to purchase and 19 grand in total over 5 years. And you wonder, why would anybody rent when you see numbers where it's obvious that the ownership is so much lower than the rental? In the open town meeting, they can have widely varying participation. They might get 50 citizens at a routine town meeting, and they can get literally 5,000 to 6,000 people in 6 buildings at, for example, a big purchase like school or firehouses like we're going through. So they need to flex their purchase, where the representative town meetings like Milton, and we quoted about 300 devices now, we're much more predictable in the number of people we're going to have, because in total we have 289 elected and ex officio members. So I took this analysis, I went to the select board last week. They can speak for themselves, but I think they were favorably disposed to the ownership option. And you can see the 2 cost components of this are, one, you have to buy the equipment up front, and we assumed a 5-year replacement value. So this would be a replacement we do in year 6. Second, we would doesn't come with any employees, so we would have to take IT employees and pay them overtime. The sources are either town hall, the library, or the schools. So we staffed 2 people per night, paid the overtime rates we've been paying during the Zoom town meetings of late, built that into the analysis, and come out recommending a purchase option for the town to adopt electronic voting. And then back to how would this work, back to the article itself. I picked language that had been commonly adopted across the Commonwealth. It's really a 2-step process. The first is to present the language about electronic voting to the town meeting and let them decide, yes, we like electronic voting, and the next time we meet, we'll adopt electronic voting. So we would not adopt it in the May meeting. We just adopt the principle of doing it in the future. And that would give our committee time to refresh the quotes, negotiate with the vendors, pick a representative vendor, bring it to a town meeting, get a demo so the members can see what it feels like, their handheld devices with a software on a server, see what it's like to see it displayed up in the high school auditorium, the big board, and try it out. So it's a chance to adopt this, test it out, pick the right vendor. And then once we've done all that, we'd bring it up live at a future town meeting and adopt electronic voting. That's the story.
2 questions from the chair. Assuming that one opts to purchase, how long does this equipment last? What's the obsolescence factor? How much maintenance is required? And is that baked in? Is the maintenance question baked into your cost? But particularly if we buy it, what's the obsolescence factor? Is it going to be something great coming out in 3 years, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera? What's your sense?
I'm unable to predict the future, but it has been about a 5 or 6 year repurchase of the towns that adopted this. The first of those did that around 2014. So assuming the model will be, if you approve this and the town buys it in calendar 22, we're going to buy it again either in 2027 or 2028. In terms of maintenance, it's relatively simple. It's somewhat of a closed system and a closed network. The best advice from the other town moderators and some of the vendors we've spoken to is the world is not ready for, using our cell phones. So I don't think, because the security is not there, the authentication is really not there. So this is a closed environment that's relatively controlled. And so not a lot of updates, not a lot of refresh. It's like a total repurchase at the end of 5 years.
In terms of the equipment itself, physically securing it and storing it, where is that being, has that particular aspect of this been discussed? Is there space? Do we have to rent things? It'll be secure? What are the dynamics there, Bob?
Yeah, I haven't discussed with the committee the specific space to put it, but the devices are fairly simple. There's some local software that would run on a PC, and then there are the 300 handheld devices that are clickers. They've just got a yes, no, and abstain button on them. So the way this would work is they'd be under the control of the IT team that staffs up town meeting. If you've been to town meeting, today you sign in and your name. What would now happen is, in addition to the clerk signing you in, they'd validate who you are. IT would hand you a clicker, and that's under your control while you're there. Then you have to hand it back to IT before you leave the building. So that's the control point, so we don't lose them. And then we'd work out whether we are able to store them at this high school, which would probably be the most convenient thing, or at town hall. We'll work that out with our staff.
Is there sufficient capacity within the town, or do we need a server capacity to be added? And is there a cost associated with that?
No, there's no server, physical server required.
Okay. Okay, that's good. That's what I wanted to know. I open this up before we turn it over to the select board for commentary. Questions from the floor. Kathy, you have the floor.
Just a quick question. Is there any warranty on these handheld devices? Like, I mean, you say the life is about 5 years, but like for the first 2 or 3, are they guaranteed at all? And if not, how do we manage the maintenance on those? I mean, I know like my kids drop phones all the time, so these look like they're something that could be dropped and stepped on and whatever.
Folded, spinded, mutilated.
Mm-hmm.
If you give me a second, I can look and see in our quotes. I don't have a contract in front of me. I just have the 3 quotes.
Okay.
I can see if one of them, for example, might have let's take this one.
I just see them very similar to a phone, and
Yep.
a phone should last 5 years, but
Let's see, training. I don't see a warranty listed here. I can follow up, but it's something we would make sure we understood before signing anything.
okay, thank you.
Other questions? Henny, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
And then Aaron. Go ahead, Henny, take it away.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Moderator Hiss. For those of us who haven't been to a town meeting before the Zoom era, can you just explain how this is done? So is it done manually now? How is voting done and that kind of thing? Just to see the cost, labor, is this going to save time? And just elucidate any of that would be helpful.
Yep. Today, all the votes are at first by voice vote. Yay, say aye, no, say nay, and the moderator makes a judgment call. If 7 members question the moderator's judgment, then they can rise in place and we'll have a standing count. And that's where we have everybody come down to the front. It's like all the ayes stand up, and we have some folks go through and count, and all the noes stand up. And then if 25 members contest that, we would have a roll call where the clerk would call out the name of every town meeting member. I've not had the roll call in my tenure. I think we had one in the prior moderator, Mr. Walsh's. I understand it can take an hour. So you get to the benefits of this, I think maybe where you're going. One, we'll always know what the exact vote is because it'll be visible on the screen. So it eliminates the standing count. Second, we keep a record of the vote of every member. Now, the town meeting can decide how much of that to disclose during the town meeting, and that'll be a procedural thing we'll work out. But we'll know who voted what, which eliminates the roll call. The third is it eliminates the quorum call. So we'll always know we have at least 145 attendees because we'll able to see the vote, and we'll know how many people checked out versus who checked in during the meeting.
Perfect. That's exactly helpful. And so thank you for saying that. So each unit would be identified to a particular town meeting voting member.
That's right. When you check in, yes.
Okay. Okay. I got it. Thank you.
Aaron, you have the floor.
Thanks, Mr. Chair. Moderator Hess, I was just curious if we've checked in with our current IT department, which they would prefer, whether it be renting or buying, and if they have any opinions about how they're going to do this since they are a department of one right now.
Yes, Mr. Mallet was on the Zoom. And
I
he's part
did
of my
see him.
subcommittee.
Rob,
I'm
are
still
you
here.
still there?
Yes, I'm
Oh,
still
there
here.
he is. Rob, do you want to take that question?
Sure. I mean, right now, IT is just, it's right now, we don't know where it's going. That's why I have the IT committee working on it. Personally, like right now, I would say rental, but once the department's been reestablished and we know what direction we're going in, then owning it would make sense. It's cheaper and it doesn't look too overly complicated. It's a clicker. There's nothing to it. It's just that manpower to, hand out, collect, make sure everything's registered. I mean, changing the batteries alone in 500 clickers could take up to 5 hours.
I bet.
Just not enough manpower just for the regular maintenance or just to make sure everything's done correctly. I mean, short term, I would say rental, but long term, once the department's been reestablished, I would consider owning it. It just makes more sense.
Great, thank you.
Does that take care of the question, Aaron? You're all set?
Yep, thank you.
Terrific. Other questions? Okay, so Lynn, does the select board, members of the select board have input for us on this article?
Mr. Chair, we met with the moderator last week to go over this article. There's actually a companion article too. I think you have both.
Yes,
of them.
the appropriation.
One of them relates to the method of voting.
Yep.
So the appropriation, I'll ask the town administrator. She's going to cover this when she gets into her budget because we're proposing to pay for it, the owned version, not the rented version, through free cash. So it's $30,000 is the recommendation, and that will be presented during the budget discussion.
Okay, perfect. Okay, I guess it may be appropriate to take, Lynn, do we have the text available to be put up for the first article dealing with the electronic voting separate from the appropriation? If so, can you put it up? We can review the, just everybody has the article's wording, precise wording, and we can possibly vote on that. Okay, we have the article and its recommendation, potential recommendation, I should say. We can all read it. I don't think we have to speak the recommendation. Are there any questions about it?
George, I just want to make sure that I am sharing the correct correct article. If somebody could just confirm that this is the correct one, and then the other one is the appropriation. Thank you.
Bob or Katie?
Yeah, that's the language I submitted. Yes.
Perfect. Okay, great. Okay, if this is the case, the chair will entertain a motion to recommend this to town meeting as presented.
So moved.
Thank you. Do we have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Steve. Any further discussion on this? Okay, hearing none. Lynn, please take the roll.
George,
Yes.
Steve,
Yes.
Dave,
Yes.
Lorraine,
Yes.
Susanna, I'll go back to Susanna. Kristen,
Yes.
Erin,
Yes.
Kathy,
Yes.
Emily,
Yes.
John,
Yes.
O'Henny,
Yes.
Scott,
Yes.
Christine,
Yes.
JJ,
Yes.
and Susanna. I'll put her
Nope.
as an abstain. I'm not sure if she's signed off.
I can't tell. Anyway, okay. It sounds as though we have a majority and this article passes to be recommended to town meeting. Thank you all. I think if that's the case, we'll defer the electric voting appropriation to the discussion with the town administrator on the budget, which is actually our next agenda item. So, Anne Marie Fagan, our town administrator, thank you for joining us. We're happy to have you, and you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Asher. Katie, would you like to say a few words before I?
Thank you, Anne Marie. George, I think both Mike Zulus and I just wanted to offer a few introductory comments. As you know, Mike's our
Please.
committee
Yeah,
chair.
go right ahead.
Mainly, I wanted to thank Anne Marie Fagan for coming back. I think Anne Marie may have retired before most of the current Warrant Committee members had come onto the committee. And so many of you may not know her, but Anne Marie was a longtime assistant town administrator and then the town administrator for several years. And we were fortunate to have her when Mike Dennehy decided to move on to the private sector, for Anne Marie to jump right in, feet first into the budget, which was an awful lot to take on because I think you've seen that just in a period of a few short weeks, she's made quite a few changes to some of the group insurance and other large budgets that impact the bottom line. She's been able to, working with both Karen Praval, the finance director, and the assistant superintendent in the school department, Amy Dexter, been able to put forward a balanced budget that also uses some funding from free cash and from the American Rescue Plan Act. And she's going to review that in detail, but I mainly wanted to thank on behalf of the board, Anne Marie Fagan, for coming back in and doing such stellar work over the last few weeks and getting us to the point that we're at, even though we've had to push out town meeting by a couple of weeks, because we had 3 people in that position of finance director over a 15-month period. First Amy Dexter, then we had Barbara Costa from an outside consultant, Mark Abrams' office. We've worked with him in the past, and then Karen Praval. And we had people handling things a little bit differently. And as a result, we've had a lot of inquiries coming back and forth from the DOR to try to certify free cash. So it's been a long process. And we're just very grateful to Anne Marie Fagan for all of her efforts and all of her work on the budget. And I'll turn it over to Mike and then Anne Marie.
Thank you. Mike, you have the floor.
Thank you, George. Thank you, Katie. Just very briefly, in terms of process, the Finance Committee of the Select Board has been meeting on this for several months, since before the first of the year, generally meeting with the Subcommittee on Finance from the School Committee to work through the budget, both the town budgets and the school budget, to try to find a consensus. We found that consensus last Friday, and that consensus budget has been supported by the Select Board. My understanding from the school committee, and some of them are here, they can tell you themselves. My understanding is that the Subcommittee on Finance supports that budget, and we fully expect when they vote on Wednesday, the school committee will support that consensus budget as well. I will say that what this budget reflects, I think it's fair to say, is a recognition that COVID has exposed and exacerbated a lot of gaps in town services, gaps in the library. The library has done incredible work during COVID, and they've had a position and a half that has been approved since 2015 that hasn't been funded. It's exposed gaps in the Council on Aging. They need another person based on the additional needs of the Council on Aging. It's exposed gaps in public safety. We're using ARPA funding, the American Rescue Plan Act, to fund a mental health specialist for the police department. And it's exposed some gaps in the school department. And we've tried to meet some of those gaps using ARPA funding as well. But I think it's fair to say that while we're able to fill some of those gaps with the ARPA funding for this budget, that's not a way towards long-term sustainability. And what we've discussed in our Finance Committee is the fact that it's fair to put before the residents of this town, perhaps next spring, the question of whether they want to continue to support the additional resources to fill those gaps in the library, in the Council on Aging, in the schools, and in public safety. And so I think there's a recognition in our discussions that to have long-term sustainability, to fill those gaps that have been identified, we're going to have to go forward with an override next spring. So that's my view of it. I think that's fair to say. It's what the Finance Committee's view on it. And Arthur, you can correct me if that's at all going beyond what we've discussed. With that, Ian Marie can go through it. But Arthur, I spoke for you. That's I just try to reflect our discussions.
Well spoken, Mr. Chairman. I would just suggest that at some point we schedule with the Warrant Committee a thorough review of the American Rescue Plan Act funding process that we have been through, the allocations and what the implications are in terms of the very important topic that you mentioned, and that is the possibility of an override to fill the gaps.
Okay, thank you very much. Are there questions for members of the Select Board from the membership before we continue? Okay, thank you. Town Administrator Fagan, Anne Marie, you have the floor. Take it away.
Thank you, Mr. Asher. Thank you, Katie. Thank you, Mike, for those kind words. So Mike touched upon the process that we undertook in order to arrive at a balanced budget. So I won't go into any more detail on that. Can you put up the first slide, Lynn, please? Lynn?
I'm sorry. Yeah,
Can you go to the
yes.
second slide?
Advance.
Sorry.
Yeah, advance.
I'm going right to the happy news. Okay, this is the happy news. I know when I met with you a couple of weeks ago, we had about a 341K deficit, and I'm happy to report that we now have a balanced budget, and I'm going to speak to how we arrived at that balanced budget. This slide will show you the revenues available. The revenues available funds were 120,586,287. We received our number last Thursday for certified free cash at a number of $2,828,988. Of that number, we're using free cash of $2,113,718. We're using ARPA funds of $997,686 for a total available revenue of $123,697,691. And our total expenditures are $123,697,691. Now, as I had said earlier, we received approximately $2.8 million in free cash, and I show here only $2.1 million in this exercise. The reason for that is because I have about $715,270 that is going to be attributable to the capital recommendation. That has not been approved by the Finance Committee or the Board of Selectmen yet, so I haven't put that in this presentation. But if you add that $715,000 to this number, it comes out to the $2.8 million. You can go to the next slide, Lynn. So this is our proposed budget from fiscal 22 to fiscal 23. It's a 6% increase. You can go to the next slide, Lynn. Welcome back to that one. I want to talk about the free cash allocation. So I'm recommending that we put $1,050,000 back into the stabilization fund. That is the amount that you used over the past 2 years. And so I think it's prudent practice to put that back in at this point in time. I mentioned the capital projects of $483,300. And there's another one down there for animal shelter a little bit further down for $291,970. So again, those two capital projects haven't been approved yet, so I didn't want to put those in the balance number yet. The election equipment, I think it makes good sense since we had a high free cash number to purchase our election equipment. So there's $18,300 for the election and registration budget as recommended by Sue Galvin, our town clerk. And then there's $30,000 for the voting equipment for town meeting. The school department we are recommending $589,808 for their curriculum needs. And that again is one-time curriculum purchases, so that's a good use for free cash. OPEB, I'd like to put $100,000 into the OPEB. That's our unfunded liability, and I think it shows again prudent budgeting when you put monies back into that unfunded liability. Affordable housing, I'd like to put $80,000. The animal shelter, as I spoke about, $291,970. Council on Aging, windows, blinds, and curtains, $15,000. Fire, $20,000 in new equipment. Library, books and material, $38,190. This will help them meet their state mandate. Police cruiser, $40,000. Information technology. We have 4 servers here at Town Hall. They're quite old, and so I would like to replace one of them and Zobio upgrades, and there's a stipend in the information technology department. That stipend I felt comfortable using free cash for because hopefully we will have a director on board, and so that stipend will be a one-time item. Planning board, a town study of open space and recreation for $50,000. And the select board, DEI initiatives for $30,000, and a shared housing service officer for $12,000. And that brings you to your total of 2.8. The next slide is revenues and projected revenue in summary. You will see that the revenues went up about 5.7%, mostly from property tax. And then I did increase the pilot program, took a look back at that and looked at all the agreements for pilot and felt comfortable increasing that number. And I increased fees and fines a little bit, again, taking a 5-year look back, and felt comfortable increasing that. So again, we are arriving at this balanced budget using our available revenue, our free cash, and our opera monies. So I hope I kept it under the 7 minutes.
No,
Mr. Director.
you've done exceptionally well, and I thank you for the summary. I have a couple of questions of my own, and we can turn it open to the membership.
Sure.
The free cash certification is actually a little better than I expected. How did it come in relative to your expectations?
To my expectations?
Yeah.
I thought it was great. Only being here for a month, I thought it was great. I think it was the real estate taxes that kind of brought it in high, and then it was, if you remember, in 20, because of the pandemic, some of the departments did have term back days.
Right. Yeah. That's encouraging. I am struck by 3 things. First off, the school department budget, and I'm not kicking the school department at all, 8.9% increase versus a 3%. And I know there are reasons for it, just seems large. I'm not going to say excessive, but it seems large. And I'm just concerned. And I think there are people who have said on the warrant committee, they're concerned that some of the allocations within it may be more than some other elements in town would be happy seeing. But I just bring that up. It is a large, notable increase. 8.9% versus 3% for the rest of the budget is significant. And I think the town meeting may be asking questions about that. We have done so, but it's just in the for what it's worth.
Mm-hmm.
Restoring the median 50,000 to the stabilization, I think, is supportable. OPEB, after the $100,000 contribution, what will be the remaining vested unfunded pension liability? I know we're moving towards closing it, but do we have a number on that?
I don't. I will get back to you on that.
Okay, thank you. Mike Zulus, you have your hand up.
Well,
Go ahead.
Just very quickly on, and I can tell you the perspective that we had on the school budget, and that is that in addition to the rollover budget, which as you know constitutes the largest portion of this, we were able to identify about $278,000 in rollover positions that were attributable to COVID-related needs that we're able to fund through the American Rescue Plan Act. So that's from the rollover budget. These are needs, again, that were exposed and exacerbated by COVID that we're able to use ARPA funding for. And if you look at the amount of the budget, if you take out ARPA, and Anne Marie can do this exercise for you, if you take out the ARPA amount from the school budget, you'll see the increase is markedly less. So the increase that you will be approving for the school budget is markedly less than 8%. A significant portion of that is what the select board will be approving through the ARPA allocation for COVID-related items. And then I will also add that of the 38 supplemental needs identified by the schools, we were able, again, through ARPA funding, because they're COVID-related, we were able to fulfill, I believe, 11 of those. 11 of the supplemental needs. And those were they were of their top 20 priorities. We were able to fill 11 of those. Again, through ARPA funding, not through the budget that this committee will technically be approving, but through the commitment of the select board to allocate ARPA funding towards. So I hope that's clear, but I think it'll make sense to pull out what this committee will be approving for the budget and what the select board will be approving in terms of ARPA funding to support those needs that have arisen based on COVID.
Yep. Okay. Questions for the membership? Kathy, you have the floor.
Yes, George. Mike, so after ARPA is over, or we'll stop getting those funds, what happens to these positions now that we're funded with the ARPA? We wouldn't be able to support those. Do they just roll off then?
It's exactly right, Kathy, and that's why I think there's a recognition from our committee, the Finance Committee, and I think from the Select Board as well, that the residents need to decide if they want to go forward with these positions. And the way for the residents to decide if it makes sense to continue to fill these gaps is through a vote, through an override. And so I think it's fair to say, look, we're filling the gaps this year that have been identified. Going forward, there's a fair way to do it, and I think the fair way to do it, I think our Finance Committee thinks the fair way to do it is to have the residents decide if these are needs that we want to approve for operational sustainability going forward. So the exact positions that were funded by ARPA, we'll be tracking those, and those would be the ones that we'd be voting on. Well, it remains to be seen about what you'll be voting on, but those are very specifically tracked because we have requirements with the federal government to track those positions and to track that funding, both for the funding that comes directly to the town and for the funding that comes to Norfolk County. So those positions are, the documentary support for those and the tracking of those positions is quite specific.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, Steve, you have the floor.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. I just have a question in regards to the local receipts. I know you didn't cover them today, but I reviewed the budget and everything. And the year-to-date actuals are significantly higher than what was expected in 2023. Is there a reason for that? Excuse me. I think it was 9,267,000 year to date, and it was like 88,000,006 or something like that.
Anne Marie, is that Steve? You're directing that to administrator. Okay, yes, Anne Marie, it's all yours.
On the revenue page, Steve, is that what you're talking?
Yeah, on the local receipts.
Yeah.
I think it was page 6, maybe.
I didn't include that one in this. Hold on.
No, it was what was sent to us prior.
Prior, okay.
Yeah, so it was the one that had the $340,000 difference. There was one page that talked about the local receipts.
Mm-hmm. Yes. I don't have the answer for that, but let me look into it and get, that was a number I got from our finance director. So I don't know how recent that number was, but let me look into that and get back to you on that.
Okay, thank you.
Oh, Anne Marie, while we have you, would you be able to give us the figure backed out of the school budget, which is attributable to ARPA and which would be otherwise absent? Because that would be helpful for our comment and would be helpful for me as I'm writing the note, because I think there are issues that people in town will want to understand how this is all coming through and how we're able to provide the services under the circumstances now. And also to be aware that they may not last. And I think people should be aware of that, because without an override, and I hate using the O word, I think we all do, but I think we have to be cognizant that it may be essential if we want to continue these services, provided that there's a consensus that they become essential going forward. I also see Betty, our friend Betty White.
I
Betty,
have that.
oh, go ahead.
I have that figure. What I did was I backed out the opera figure with the 997, and I also backed out the 589,808 for the curriculum, because that's one-time free cash. So by backing those numbers out, which was approximately 1.3, it's about a 5.3% increase.
Okay, so it's still a 5.3 increase, which is attributable to volume, students, additional forward, student facing, all the things that we've seen these years. But that's helpful. So of the 8.9, 3.6 is payable by ARPA, from the ARPA funds. Am I right with that?
Yes.
That increase. Okay.
Opera and the one-time curriculum free cash.
One-time free cash. Okay. Okay, Betty, welcome. Do you have something to add to us?
I was wanting to respond to Kathy's question about the needs of the students with the ARPA funding. And in a recent, we have a new subcommittee that focuses on curriculum. And in a recent meeting, we looked at data that has been presented at a prior school committee meeting, as well as in the curriculum meeting, that basically showed where our students were when they came in September. They did some assessments that were mostly math and English assessments on where kids' reading was, where their math skills were. And then they did, that was a fall assessment. And then they reassessed the children in winter. And then we're going to have a spring assessment as well. And even though many of the kids have made some really nice growth and are doing well, there are some categories of students that continue to struggle. And the research is showing, Kathy and others, that some of this learning loss that was related to the pandemic is going to be with us for more than a year or two. They're actually thinking the impact is going to be a longer time. And we will have to, as a school system and as a town, address those needs moving forward as the needs change. And while I have the floor, I'm just going to say that this finance subcommittee and the rest of the school committee that attend the select board's finance subcommittee meetings, along with the town administration, we're really grateful and appreciative of the collaboration that we had with the boards. And especially, I did this last week, but I want to call out the great work of Anne Marie Fagan and Karen Praval and Amy Dexter. The way that they worked together was really heartwarming. So thank you.
Betty, thank you very much. Other questions by the membership for Anne Marie Fagan and the budget process that we finally see? Scott, you have the floor. Betty, your hand is still up. Do you have anything else to say? Okay, Scott, you have the floor. Take it away.
Good evening, everyone. I am still waiting before we appropriate money to the schools. I cannot in good faith vote to appropriate any money to them until the schools answer the questions that they did not answer back from my questions. The schools have a strategic plan that has no viable to speak of objectives on it. The schools are falling in the rankings, and I'm concerned that we're not getting our money's worth. There's never been, there's no thinking about restructuring. It's the same business that's been going on forever. I was told that they were going to back burner my questions because they didn't think that the plans for the school, when I asked them for a strategic plan for the last 5 years individually. I got a consolidated plan that was last updated in December of 2020. I was told in a phone call with Mr. Jett that I was going to get the plan within 2 weeks. That was in early February. And then on the 3rd, on the 3rd of March, we were going to be presented the plan, the strategic plan, and it still was not ready on March the 6th. But if anybody reviews these strategic plans, you'll see that they are not strategic plans. They don't have objectives. They're not measurable. And I want to know who's holding these schools to account to deliver high quality education to our children. We know pre-pandemic, they were falling in the rankings. We appropriated money for math tutors in December of 2020. Now we're being told that children are still falling behind. And the bottom line is those math tutors were never hired. They're still not hired. And we were told, well, there was nobody available. We couldn't get the best people. And the bottom line is it sounds like a lot of excuses to me. And it's not getting the job done. And as I've stated publicly, I'll state it again, we should have some sort of goal to be one of the top school districts in Massachusetts. And it's one of my goals. I'm not saying this because I'm a mean person or trying to criticize people. I'm saying this as a fact that unless we plan and have objectives, we're planning on failing. And somehow, before we appropriate money and just keep throwing money at a situation that has no direction to it, we're not going to get a top 10 school district in the state. And I don't think that parents want this. So I'd like to ask the school department where the answer to my questions are, first of all.
I will ask response to be concise as possible because it's a very complicated question. But Scott, I think to your question, I would think as a citizen, the people responsible for holding the school committee, holding the schools and the administration to a standard is the school committee. And Ada, your hand is up. You're recognized. You have the floor.
Thank you, Chair Asher, and thank you, Mr. Johnson, for your questions about strategic planning and where the school district is. I've been the chair of the strategic planning subcommittee of the school committee for the last 5 years. I've been on the school committee. We developed the plan that is in place right now about 3.5 years ago. And it is what's known as an evergreen plan that evolves as the needs evolve over the course of the time that the plan is in place. That plan was designed to be a 3 to 5 year plan, which expires in June of 2022. So it's not that we don't have a plan right now. What we're doing right now is revising the plan substantially based on the impacts of the things that have happened since that last plan was written. As we all know, the pandemic has had an enormous impact on education. In addition, the call for attention to the needs of racial justice and equity. And our new plan that is being developed and will be presented at the April 6th school committee meeting will be an updated, streamlined version of a plan that has 3 goals instead of the 6 that our current plan has. And I think you'll find that there are quite a number of measurable items in the new plan that will satisfy your concerns about being able to track progress. And we will continue to meet regularly. The strategic planning committee meets quarterly, reports back to the school committee regularly. And as Chair Asher mentioned, the school committee is ultimately responsible for the direction with working with the superintendent of schools.
Ada, can I ask the question, as you are preparing this strategic plan, and we welcome seeing it, obviously, we know it's a great deal of work and having written many strategic plans, for every enterprise, they're different. A school department will be different than companies, for example, or for-profit organizations. Is there any possibility that we as the Warrant Committee can see it in advance of its review with the school committee? Because we're under a different timeline.
Sure.
Unfortunately, we're pressed against the wall. Surprise, surprise. Is there a possibility we can have a look at that in advance, even if it's in a draft form? Because Scott has been appropriately bringing this forward for a great long while, and I understand the complexities. I think we all do. But to have this as a part of our decision making would be extremely constructive to us, and might even relieve some of the issues that we can see, or certainly alleviate them. I don't say nothing eliminates anything, because there's always a concern when you're talking about this much money and kids and all that sort of thing. But if you can do that, I think it would be helpful.
Yes, actually, the Strategic Planning Committee is meeting tomorrow morning to have its last review of the plan prior to bringing it to the school committee the following week. So after that meeting, after we've had a chance to get feedback from the Strategic Planning Committee, I'd be happy to give you an advance copy.
Scott, how does that, go ahead, you have the floor.
Yeah. Thanks, Ada. That was very nice what you said. Just as a sneak preview tonight, you had said there were 3 main objectives in the new plan that are measurable. Could you just tell us what those are just quickly?
Sure. The 3 goals are personalized learning, safe and supportive schools, and equity are the 3 areas. And they're very clearly defined. I won't go into the details of them here, but they're clearly defined in the plan as written, and we'll give you a lot more detail with more specifics for each one.
And
Susanna,
is there no?
Go ahead, Scott.
Go ahead, George.
No, I would say if you have a follow-up, that's fine, because I'd like to recognize Susanna next.
Yeah. Is there no objective to raise the schools in the rankings?
Right.
I hear nothing about academic performance objectives, and that's, that should be the #1 goal, I would think. And where are we going with this? Personalized learning is great. That's a very subjective thing. And I'm big on to individual learning and inspirational learning. But there's nothing in there that, where are we? I guess I asked my question.
Is it all right if I respond?
Oh, please do. Yes, please do. You have the floor.
Sure.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
Personalized learning is not a subjective thing. It is based on the data that is being gathered by teachers and administrators that is then used to help shape the educational programs for our students. And the students will be involved in being able to look at their own progress and planning their learning as they get older, as well as parents will be able to review in relation to how students are doing. So it's very, very much data oriented, and I believe you'll see that in the plan, Mr. Johnson.
So what about an objective of, why is there not an objective to raise the schools in the rankings?
The schools, the schools seek academic excellence, and that is in our mission statement, which is stated in our plan as well. It is part of every goal that we're looking at. It's not its own goal. It's integrated and incorporated into all of our goals to help all of our students succeed and to their highest potential.
Okay, thank you. Susanna, you have the floor. Thank you, Scott.
Yeah, my question was similar to Scott's, but I don't want to beat a dead horse because I think you've answered it, Ada. But slightly different question. You described the 3 tenets in the new plan. What I see missing is academic excellence, which, to Scott's point, relates to rankings, obviously. I mean, it seems to me that the school's #1 goal should be academic excellence. I'm all in favor of individualized plans, but maybe there should be 4. That's very concerning to me because I see it reflected in the budget as well, a lack of resources directed to academic excellence. And when you then present a strategic plan where that is notably absent as a school committee, that's concerning. So I guess, we've said that now, so I think you've given the answer. But with regard to personalized learning, because I'm super interested in that because it's something that in my personal experience has been lacking. Is it your sense and the school committee's sense that that's new, or that we're planning on embarking on that now because it hasn't been done in the past? I'm just trying to get a sense of, do we feel like that's happening now? Does the school committee believe that's happening now? Because I'm trying to see if we're all on the same page in terms of that.
I would say it's a new direction as a district, for the district as a whole. It's happening in some places, but not consistently. And I think that having it as part of our strategic plan shows our intention of bringing everyone along in that area.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. Anne Marie, you had your hand up next. Do you have a response?
Yes, thank you. No, actually, I wanted to circle back to Steve's question. I was busy trying to back out those numbers in the school side to get you that percentage, and I didn't have that local receipt breakdown. I found it now, and I just wanted to comment a little bit about that. Yes, the year-to-date actual is 9.2, and we're only looking to appropriate 8.8. It's always been my practice to budget local receipts conservatively. You don't know what can happen in any given year, and it's really only about a $350,000 difference. And so I just feel more comfortable being on the conservative side. I hope that answers your question.
Okay, that's a little out of order, but Steve, do you have a response so we can get back to the other points?
Yeah, real quick. Thank you for that. So if it comes in at 9.5 million, 300 the opposite, where does that money go?
It will get turned back to our fund balance. Then
So back into the general fund.
Yeah, yep, and then use the next year for free cash.
To be spent wherever you want.
Yes.
Okay.
The next year for free cash.
Yeah, not to be spent wherever you want.
Oh, Henny, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and I appreciate this discussion. I think Member Johnson has brought up a very important point about the school budget, and then in the role of thinking about this in terms of money well spent. We have been looking at the strategic plan for years, and that's one part of it. And I agree fully that the plan needs to be tangible, right? I think these things are measurable. The boards I sit on are focused on some of the most excellent schools in this country, focus on some of the same things. I think personalized, education, equity, those things, but those things can be tangibly demonstrated, right? There's 2 ways you raise your ranking, by raising the top and by raising the bottom. And I think both are important as we look at this. And so I agree with Member Johnson's point of pushing the plan, which is one part of it. And I agree the second part is the leadership, executing the plan. I think Scott might agree with me that we have to focus on that as well. I think we know the math scores are low. We've seen that data. That data was horrific, right? And no one felt comfortable with that data. And so I think when there is allocation made and there is not, and you don't fund those positions, there has to be accountability for that, right? In terms of, well, we couldn't hire, then we want to look to see how can we fund, help resource the school in a way that's actually going to be beneficial. I do thank you, Member Rosemary, for your work on the strategic committee and pulling this plan together. My ask is, when you send it back to us, can you tie equity into school outcomes? Can you tie personalized medicine into school outcomes? Those links are there. I know they're there. I've seen them. Let's pull them through in our strategic plan so that there's no question on what the impacts will be.
Okay, Betty, you have the floor. And then we're going to move the discussion a little beyond this, because I think we have other things.
That's fine. I just wanted to comment that, the school committee was not invited tonight. Ada and I are here as members of the school building committee on another item that's coming up, and we're certainly happy to discuss some of the issues that the members raised, but I think that we had a meeting scheduled for last week that had to be canceled because of a scheduling glitch. But I think, I don't feel comfortable speaking for the school committee when I'm just a member of the school committee. And I'm just saying, if you wanted to speak further about some of these issues, then I think, we can invite the school committee and Superintendent Jett and Assistant Superintendent Amy Dexter and Janet Sheehan to come to discuss some of these issues in more detail.
We do have that on our agenda for one of our next meetings, so I think that will handle that. But as these budget issues are coming up in the totality of the budget, I think it's fully appropriate, disagreeing with you, Betty, fully appropriate for ask these questions to pose them to the select board and to the warrant committee, who are empowered to make that line item to the school committee. And because we know once we turn that money over to the school committee, you have full authority of what to do. So to have these comments raised in this forum, I think is appropriate. Responses that we get from the school committee are fine, and I think we will have that at one of our next meetings. I will echo both Scott and Susanna, though, in my experience, having chaired boards of high schools, sat on college and university boards, and not-for-profits responsible for education, I will say it is a notable omission not to have academic excellence in a goal. Forget the mission statement. The goal has to be academic excellence. Otherwise, what's the sense of having a school between you and me? And that's my opinion, but I do feel necessarily to raise it, having put kids through the Milton Public Schools and been a product of it to some degree myself. Academic excellence, everything else flows from that. If one opens the mind of a child and a young person, then equity and all the other neat things that we're talking about that appear to be driving the car in many places, in many ways, will follow, because an open mind and an open perspective is what leads to a balanced society, I believe. That's my sermon. Scott, you have the floor. And then Suzanne.
To Ms. Haggerty's point, to Mr. Asher's point, to Mr. Asari's point, of which we all seem to be in agreement, a rarity. I had to throw a little comedy in. I just would like either the select board or the members of the school committee, since you don't feel free to talk tonight about this, to get back to us as to when the questions that I submitted to you a few weeks ago for the school committee sub-budget committee meeting, when they will be answered. I'd like to know when my questions are going to be answered. They were submitted in writing. I'd like the answers in writing.
If we can get a direct answer to that, we still have two speakers and we really have to move along.
That's all I have to say.
Thank you. Ada, can you respond? I know you've had your hand up, but go ahead. If you want to take that, that'll be helpful.
I do not have your questions in front of me, Mr. Johnson. I will bring those back to Superintendent Jett and Assistant Superintendent Dexter to do the best we can to respond to your questions. I think that sharing an early copy of our new and updated strategic plan will answer a lot of your questions. But I appreciate the comments made tonight about the focus on academic excellence and to be sure that that shows. And it's good timing because, as I said, the Strategic Planning Committee is meeting tomorrow morning, and then this will be going to the school committee as well. And we want to be sure that academic excellence is part of our work. It's an important part of our work. But all of those, the academic excellence is achieved by achieving the goals that we've set for ourselves in terms of equity, in terms of safe and supportive schools, and in terms of personalized learning. So they're all tied together. It's not that you deal with one without dealing with all of them.
Oh, that did not answer my question. Who do I need to talk to get a straight answer as to when you will not be insubordinate as a board and answer questions that the warrant committee submitted to you in writing?
Scott, I'm gonna bring it back a little bit. I appreciate the nature of the question. I appreciate your interest in having it. I think we will have the answer. We can expect an answer to that question shortly. I think that we already have had a little bit of that answer but I will be sure that we do get a response. On your behalf, I will communicate with the chair of the school committee and the superintendent to make sure that we have as full a response as possible. Okay? Okay, let's see. And Susanna, you had your hand up.
Yes, very quickly. I just want to say, for myself, I misunderstood Ada and Betty, your presence here, and for that I apologize. I assumed that you would come because the last meeting had been canceled and that you were on the agenda for tonight. So I delved into the substance of this, thinking that was why you were here. I completely understand needing to consult with the full board to have answers, but I do think from my perspective, it's been helpful to have this in advance, to have this information earlier. And I understand that, the full board needs to speak for itself. I will say, without, and then I'm done, without being overly argumentative, I think I'm not the only person with this perspective. So I think it's important for the school committee to know. I don't believe that academic excellence will be solved by the 3 tenets that you described. I don't believe that academic excellence comes from a combination of equity, safety, and personalized plans. I don't think I'm alone in that on the Warrant Committee, and I don't think I'm alone on that in the town of Milton. So I would urge the committee to consider that not everybody shares that perspective.
Thank you, Susanna. Katie Conlon, you had your hand up. You have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just want to call to everybody's attention that what's on your agenda is what we put on our agenda because we wanted to mirror your agenda. It says select board to discuss with the Warrant Committee. It was select board and the interim town administrator to discuss with the Warrant Committee the FY23 budget. So it didn't mention the school committee, and it seems to me we're kind of moving into an area about a strategic. We're going to have a long discussion about strategic plan. It's probably something you need to have on your agenda for open meeting law purposes. And I'll just say, as one member of an elected board that's here with another couple of other members of an elected board to, hear the term insubordination accused of an elected board, I really take that a little bit, I find that a little bit offensive. And I think we should move on.
I don't disagree that we should move on. And I know that there are issues that raise people's interest who respond differently. And unfortunate, I don't think there's any, I can't believe that any member of this committee would want to be offensive to any other one through a choice of words. But if there was offense taken, please don't, because I'm sure it wasn't intended that way. I mean, we're here to execute the business of the town. And as I say, we know that words can be used differently, but right now let's take our concerns and mobilize them further in the final discussions of the budget. Do you, let's see, I don't see any hands up. Katie, do you want to take a further discussion on the budget from the select board's perspective and share that with us before we move on? You're welcome to do so.
Well, I don't have a lot to add, Mr. Chair, to what Anne-Marie Fagan said. The Finance Committee met last Friday morning. We did have some representatives of the School Finance Committee available to us. Most of our board, we had 4 members of the board there at the meeting. So what's the town administrator has presented has the support of the board.
Yep.
I believe that was our vote. Mr. Zulus can correct me if I'm misremembering.
So since we have
the board voted in support of this proposal for free cash and the American Rescue Plan Act, as well as the general budget numbers that the town administrator presented.
So I guess I would put this, if we're going to fast forward a little bit, and this I don't believe this is out of scope for the discussion. Maintaining certain services without ARPA funds has been presented to us as leading to a potential next year for an override. As the Warrant Committee has historically been involved in discussions and concerns of this nature, what would you perceive is the nature of the override? What percentage would be viewed? How much do you want to raise? Is this in a form that can be presented or discussed, or are we still kind of nebulous in thinking how this might work?
Are you directing that to me, George?
To you or to Arthur Doyle or to Mike Zulus, either any one of you who's here. I'm interested because you would be the ones who would be bringing it forward, I think.
So, I think Mike spoke to that at the beginning of the discussion.
Right.
We're not in a position to put out any specific numbers or positions or anything like that. I mean, there's a lot that has to happen at this town meeting. And then as we go through the budget process next year, both Ms. Collins and I will be stepping off the select board in a month. So we're going to have a new board and we'll have new members on the school committee. We'll have some turnover on the different boards. So the finance committee has had more of a discussion than the full board has about this. So I'll ask Mr. Zulus if he'd like to speak to it, but I think it's really premature to have any level of detail at this point.
But again, we're putting it on the table. I mean, I'm obliged to at least ask the question. I mean, if we can't discuss it in detail, that's fine.
All I was trying to say, George, was that in terms of specific details, I don't think beyond what Mike said about the positions that are funded by ARPA.
I'm guessing it would be a relatively small number compared to the rest of the budget at this juncture. But I mean, when we do have that concept introduced, it does bring it pricks the ears up a little bit. Mike, you have the floor.
Thank you, George, and thank you, Katie. I'll just add that this has been a discussion among the Finance Committee, the Select Board, about the reality of the fact that we are plugging holes and gaps with ARPA funding. And we're not, and there are holes that have been exposed and exacerbated by COVID in many town departments. As I said, library, council on aging, public safety, in the schools. And so it's a recognition in our discussions that there's not operational sustainability to a budget that includes $1 million, almost $1 million in ARPA funding. And so the question is, how do you achieve operational sustainability when you don't have our ARPA funding going forward? The only answer is to put it to the voters.
Yes.
The voters want to do it. And so that's so in terms of the specifics, as Katie said, we don't have them at this point. All we have are the specifics of this budget this year, which for the long term, given the fact that we're using ARPA funding for the long term, we need the voters and the residents to weigh in on that to see if that's the direction they want to go in, at least in the judgment of the finance committee.
Okay. All right. As long as we're understanding that this is something that that is a possibility and it's on the table at this point. I will thank the members of the select board and the school committee, Ada, Betty, and I hope I'm not missing anyone, for joining us. We really appreciate your input. Please don't feel that we're ganging up on you or anything like that, because we're not. We're obliged to ask these questions. And if the questioning is aggressive, the times are requiring us all to be particularly vigilant about how funds are spent and the accountability that we need to provide, whether we're elected or appointed, to the residents of the town. And I know we're all doing as much as we can to provide value for funds for the town. I'm going to move on to the next agenda item, which is the article street acceptance. Lynn, do you want to put that up, please? So we can see what we're talking about, and if there are any questions about that, anybody from the select board wants to bring up with us. Katie, who was carrying the ball on this one from the select board?
We can speak to it. I believe the planning director spoke to it at one of your prior meetings. So
but
the revised.
Yes, go ahead.
This is a slightly revised article. We are looking to acquire a fee interest, not just an easement. That was a question that was raised at a planning board meeting. This is a road that I think Mr. Zawinski went over this. This is a road that was always intended to become a public way during the negotiations over many years, during not only the planning board special permit process, but also during the select board acting as Governor Stoughton trustees discussions on this property. So what we're doing, we're asking town meeting, after having had a public hearing at the select board and input from the planning board, we're asking town meeting to authorize the select board to accept Woodlot Road as a public way and to take a fee interest in the road. And the town council has drafted this legal language for the recommendation.
Thank you. Any questions about this? Because if not, I think we can proceed. This is reasonably straightforward. We can proceed to a vote. I don't, I cannot see, unfortunately, I can't see, because this is up, if we have questions. So if Lynn, if you want to bring it down just temporarily, I can see if there are questions and we can put it to a vote. No questions. I don't see no hands up. If that's the case, Lynn, if you want to put it back up, we can, the chair will entertain a motion to accept this article as presented.
So moved.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Any further discussion? Hearing none. Lynn, please take the roll.
I'm sorry, just wasn't clear who made the first motion, who made this.
Scott moved.
Okay.
John
thank you.
seconded.
Scott moved and
Thank
John
you.
seconded, right?
Okay. George,
Yes.
Steve,
Yes.
Dave,
Yes.
Lorraine,
Yes.
Susanna,
Yes.
Kristen,
Yes.
Erin,
Yes.
Kathy,
Yes.
Emily,
Yes.
John,
Yes.
O'Henny,
Yes.
Scott,
Yes.
Christine, and JJ.
Yes.
Thank you all. Our next item is the, excuse me, the Master Plan Implementation Committee article, the increase in that. Again, I think we've had some discussion on this. Katie or whomever from the select board is able to talk to further questioning about this or any other perspectives we need to know. Please, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. We actually thought you had already voted to recommend this one, but we're seeking to add 2 members to the Master Plan Implementation Committee. This is a committee that's jointly appointed by our board and the planning board. And the idea here is to just add a couple more voices, hopefully increase some additional voices. There is a member of the planning board and a member of the select board and 3 members appointed from the public. And we'd like to increase more voices on this committee and allow some additional work to be done as this committee continues working on the 2015 master plan.
We did actually discuss this. If we voted, we did not see the specific language, and I wanted to make sure that we had that, which we now do. And if there are any questions on this for further discussion, the chair will entertain that. Otherwise, we can move directly to a vote on the language. Seeing no questioning, the chair will entertain a motion to accept this article as presented.
So moved.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Thank you. Any further discussion? If not, Lynn, please take the roll.
George,
Yes.
Steve,
Yes.
Dave,
Yes.
Lorraine,
Yes.
Susanna,
Yes.
Kristen,
Yes.
Erin,
Yes.
Kathy,
Yes.
Emily,
Yes.
John,
Yes.
O'Henny,
Yes.
Scott,
Yes.
Christine,
Yes.
JJ.
Yes.
Thank you very much. Our next article is actually something we've already heard a little bit about. Mike Zulis, do you have anything further, or Arthur or Katie for that matter, to add about the municipal light article? And Lynn, if you can throw that up, that would be helpful.
Mr. Chair, on this one and the land swap for the school building project, I'm going to recuse myself, so I'll turn off my video and Mr. Zulus will address these.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah, yeah.
Mike, you have the floor.
Yeah, George, I was under the impression that this committee voted unanimously last week to support this, so I didn't really
as I
prepare
say,
anything. Oh,
okay.
okay.
I know that we were, but again, I don't know that we necessarily had the language and the recommendation.
Okay.
So I'm giving you the opportunity, if there's anything further you want to add, Mike. I mean, you already gave us a very concise and a very good presentation on this, and I think we all like it, obviously, because I think anything that is an option to what some of us are paying is helpful potentially.
Yeah.
So yeah, does anybody have any questions then? Otherwise, we can move directly to the vote on the language. Okay, hearing and seeing none. Lynn, would you kindly? Oh, the chair will entertain a motion to adopt this language and recommend it to town meeting as presented.
So moved.
Thank you. Do we have a second?
Second.
Thank you. Lynn, please take the roll. I don't think we have any further discussion. I'll leave that. If anybody wants to say anything, now's your time. but otherwise, Lynn, please take the roll.
George,
Yes.
Steve,
Yes.
Dave,
Yes.
Lorraine,
Yes.
Susanna,
Yes.
Kristen,
Yes.
Erin,
Yes.
Kathy,
Yes.
Emily,
Yes.
John,
Yes.
O'Henny,
Yes.
Scott,
Yes.
Christine,
Yes.
JJ.
Yes.
Terrific. Thank you all very much. That passes. The land swap. Now, we have a couple of people, I think, who are joining us. Lynn, did they confirm their attendance for tonight?
George, actually, this was put on the agenda because we had the select board here.
Oh, right.
Citizens
Okay.
who are coming to speak will be coming at a later date.
That's right. I didn't know whether any of them were coming tonight. I just wanted to be sure I don't leave anybody off. But if that's the case, then Mike, please talk to us about this, because I think we will defer a vote until we hear from some of the other data points that we were interested in hearing from. But if you have something, I know we've got Sean O'Rourke and Ned Corcoran, who will very briefly share with us their thoughts. And I underscore the very brief because brief works for us. Go ahead, Mike. What have you got for?
I think that's right, George, and I'll defer to Sean, and I'll acknowledge that the last vote showed the benefit of keeping my mouth shut. So I'll try to recognize that on this one as well.
Okay, thank you, Mike. I think we all understand you've done enormous work on this, and the benefits are great. But anyway, Sean, you have the floor. Thank you for joining us. Please identify yourself, etc. For the minute.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. My name is Sean O'Rourke, Chair of the School Building Committee and Town Meeting Member, Precinct 8, 27 Quarry Lane. So since last we met, there were some takeaways I got from our last meeting and presentation. Namely, the two were meeting with Conservation Commission and retouching again with the neighborhood associations. So essentially a very quick timeline. It's been busy the past 2 weeks. On March 15th, we met with Conservation Commission, gave them a presentation similar to what we gave to you guys last time. That followed on a site walk that we did along with all the neighbors of the proposed parcels on Saturday. That same week of town meeting, as we interweaved COMCOM that week, we also met with Home Inc., which Ned Corcoran's here to talk to also. I did reach out to Joe Mondugno that week, but we weren't able to kind of connect for another meeting. But we have ongoing.
I think he's coming to our meeting Wednesday or next Monday. But I know he's on the agenda at one of them.
Yeah, we thought he would be here tonight, and that's why we're here. But we'll be back next week.
That's okay.
Yeah, further update that happened too. That same week on March 17th, we met with the school committee. They had voted on the two options that we presented for option 2, the new middle school, which kind of aligns with this parcel of land and getting that synergy with the high school. We were made aware of a letter that Mr. Mondugno sent to the Warrant Committee, so we felt the need to kind of send a response that we sent to you guys on Saturday, on the 25th, and the site walk that we did. So prior to that, just to enunciate too, I know there was concern saying we didn't meet with the neighbors, and I wasn't sure if people had heard it at our last meeting. But prior, on March 3rd and March 10th, we held online community forums with a number of participants. And even before that, in the September and October, we had neighborhood community meetings regarding these parcels. So the history of our neighborhood engagement goes back all the way to fall of last year.
Okay. Any questions about this for Mr. O'Rourke? Christine, you have the floor.
I may have missed it. The letters you referenced, when did we get those?
Yes,
I thought they should all have been circulated.
Yes, we got them.
Yeah, because I received it, and I know Lynn is
over the last 2 days. I think we got them all.
You check your email, Christine, because they've all come through within the last 48 hours or so. If not, we can resend them.
That'd be great, because I'm looking and I keep deleting my one too.
Sometimes they can get buried in email trails too.
George, can I just add something?
Yeah, go ahead.
I circulated Mr. O'Rourke's letter.
Yep.
I did not receive, I'm sorry, I'm going to mispronounce his name, Mr. Mundano.
Modugno?
Modugno, thank you. Personally, but I'm happy to forward it to the warrant committee to make sure everybody has it if somebody could send me a copy. And I just want to add one last thing, that he'll be at the 4-4 meeting if we have that.
I will go through my email, and if it has not, I thought everybody received it. If I
I
received
got it.
okay, then I thought everybody did, but
Yeah.
we'll make sure that it's recirculated so that there's no question, because I know I got it, and I'm pretty
There's an
sure it's
attachment.
on that list but if it ended up somewhere in the ether, then we'll deal with it. Ned, welcome. You have or Kristen, hang on before Ned. Kristen, do you have a question?
Yeah, I see that Joseph's in attendance. Mr. Monduco is here. If we were looking to speak with him.
Oh, really? I didn't see him, but no, I don't see him. No, I don't.
On the second,
on the second
if you
page.
click over to the second page.
Oh, he is here.
Yep.
He is here, but he hasn't spoken up, so I'm guessing he's either muted and non-videoed, or I don't know where. Oh, well, anyway, he is on our agenda for our meeting in April 4th, right? So perhaps you can speak to us then. Anyway, Ned, you're welcome. We're very happy to have you, and we're just to hear what you have to say.
Chair, members of the committee, I'm Ned Corcoran, formerly a longtime resident of Milton, now resident of Jamaica Plain, but have a law practice here in Milton, and I am representing Home Inc. Home Inc., as you may know, is the only private property that directly abuts the property that is under consideration for the location of this new school. And 2 or 3 of the specific units within Home Inc. are very close to the property line. Having said that, Home Inc. has been very appreciative of the effort that Sean O'Rourke and others have made. We met last week with Sean and Betty White at Home Inc. They are concerned, as you might imagine, about potential impacts for a school as close it will be to their property. But at this point, they're not opposed. They have a list of concerns that they have prepared. We're sharing that. We'll be sharing that with Sean and the committee that go to everything from ground and stormwater management, noise, trespassing, traffic, all of the usual topics that you have to go through when you have any large project. But they understand, I think, the difficulty that this committee has had in finding a location that can work, that wouldn't otherwise require the exercise of the town's power of eminent domain and a costly litigation associated with trying to purchase private property. And so they are, at this point, as I said, cautious, but willing to work with the committee as long as the committee makes sure that they have a seat at the table for regular monitoring discussions and other meetings. And so I'm happy to answer questions, but that is fundamentally today where the committee is. There are, where Home Inc. and its committee is. And as I said, several members of that entity, including Joe Murphy, who was a longtime member of the school building committee the last time we came around. Joe's unit is 20 feet from the property line.
So generally, Ned, you would reflect back that Home Inc. is constructive on the concept. They're not opposed. They just have concerns that would be natural for any abutter.
Yes, at this point, they are not. They've authorized me to speak relative to constructive nature of concerns, and looking forward to being very much part of the process of designing and responding to all of those concerns. But they are not standing up and saying, "Well, no way."
Well, that's where I think, as any good neighbor, they're doing the right thing. They're voicing their concern and saying, "Let's see what the right thing to do here is." So, questions for Representative the abutter, Ned Corcoran, for Home Inc. From the membership? Well, Ned, thank you very much. Oh, I'm sorry, Christine, you have the floor. And did I hear John Driscoll with a question too? Well, Christine, I saw your hand first and then John. Please go ahead. You're muted, Christine.
So firstly, I mean, I think that, everybody's really interested in making sure that the school gets what they need. These questions are questions that we have to ask to make sure that we see the full picture. This is a question for Mr. O'Rourke. You said you met with the Conservation Committee and you did a site walk. Can you tell us what feedback they gave you?
Sean, are you still? Go ahead. You have the floor.
Yeah, no problem. So, we held the presentation on the 15th. We gave it to them. The community members that participated in that meeting wanted to do a site walk just to kind of ascertain certain wetlands that might be there. On the parcel in question on Gow Road, there is some wetlands, but kind of at the edge of our parcel, more on the home Inc. side, based on what Mr. Ivas had marked out. So that part of this has been a kind of an educational process for people that even if Conservation Commission gives up deed to the land, they don't give up control over the wetlands that exist on there. And I think that's a real, it's been an educational process for everybody there. So because of that concern, that's what led to the site walk. So we walked through the initial parcel that we're talking about on Gow Road where we'd like to build the school. For us, we like it because the synergy of having it next to the high school and how it works there. The remaining 3 parcels that we walked were 2 on Herrick Drive. The 2 parcels are in the 100-year flood zone, but they're not conservation land right now. So what happens is that's that boundary of what's controlled by Conservation Commission and what's owned. So the parcels right now, because they're in wetlands, are controlled by the Conservation Commission, but essentially you can still build on them. It's a longer process, but they're town-owned parcels. The other parcel that's in question, or we're using in the swap, is a parcel up off Randolph Ave, where the access road to the old dump is. That has, that has a small portion of wetlands along the edge of the road, but the majority of that parcel is upland buildable site. And most of the Conservation Commission that was there was kind of in agreement of that finding. We did that once at the meeting where we looked at the maps and the topography and then confirmed it when we were out on the site.
Okay, thank you. John, you have the floor. You have a question?
Ed, I do quite a bit of work for home. Should I excuse myself on this?
You?
Oh, probably.
I know that you do. Probably,
Yeah, I think that would be wise, John, to recuse yourself on this. We're not voting tonight, but you're okay to do that.
I would just
other questions for this. Ada, do you have something to add?
Yes, I do, if I may.
Please go ahead.
Betty White and I sit on the school building committee as representatives of the school committee, and I actually serve as vice chair of the school building committee. And I'll just add that because of the timing of these warrant committee meetings and the conservation committee meetings, the conservation committee has not had the opportunity to have again after their site walk to arrive at a vote, but we're hoping that they might be able to schedule that before next week. And we would love to bring you that positive vote.
John Kiernan has already been in touch and he's moving his meetings around, so we may have that data beforehand, but thank you for that. We will be very interested to hear what he has to say about that. But he already has communicated and we're working on that. So thank you. Appreciate that. Ned, do you have something very quick to add?
Yes, it's just very quickly. One of the things that I think we all in our meetings with Sean and others all recognize is that at some point we need to get actual survey so that we know what the topography is, we know what the ground is, we know where the wetlands are specifically located. It's hard to consider whether and what and how if you really don't know what the ground looks like. And that's an important next step. And I would urge that Sean and his group get going on that, because that type of information can go a long way to answer questions and concerns.
Definitely. I think that we'll note that also in our in our minutes as well, that's been an input. I think that was brought up at one of our earlier meetings, but it's always good to have it reinforced. Okay, I think we'll defer a vote on this one until we have some more inputs, and we're expecting more, and so we can move along to our next agenda items, which include some of these are reasonably perfunctory votes to adopt for the purposes of the warrant, to hear the report of the town officers, to authorize the treasurer to collect taxes, to authorize the treasurer to enter into compensating balance agreements, to have the union wage set aside, the retirement board cost of living increase. We've got the recommendation. I think we already voted on that one. The community preservation funds recommendation, which we have not seen, which we need to vote on. The Milton Cemetery revolving fund, the authorization of the use of revolving funds, and the authorization to the select board to accept easements. These again are all at the beginning of the warrant. They're kind of boilerplate, and we do need to vote on them. Town council has indicated to me that we have to vote individually. And I believe, Lynn, do we have all the texts that we can show up ready to go?
Hi, George. I do. This is going to be presented in the new software, the ClearGov. So I just wanted to give you a heads up. It will look a little bit different.
It's okay. We're happy to have it. This is a little bit of a tedious process, but we do have to go through it. Okay, so Article 1. Oh, here you go. I liked it better the other way, but that's okay because I could read it. This is a little bit of an eye chart for an old guy. Okay, Article 1, as presented. Do I have a motion to accept this as presented?
So moved.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Do we need any discussion? Hearing none. Lynn, please take the roll.
George.
Yes.
Steve.
Yes.
Dave.
Yes.
Lorraine.
Yes.
Susanna.
Yes.
Kristen.
Yes.
Aaron.
Yes.
Kathy.
Yes.
Emily.
Yes.
John.
Yes.
O'Henny.
Yes.
Scott.
Abstain.
Christine.
Keep
Christine?
going.
Okay. JJ.
Yes.
Christine?
Yeah, I said yes, sorry.
Okay.
Is that it? Do we have everybody?
That was it, George. I'm about to share
Okay, thank you.
Article
That-
2.
Article 2, here to hear the report of town officers. Chair will entertain a motion to recommend this to town meeting.
So moved.
We have a second.
Second.
Any discussion? Hearing none. Lynn, please take the roll.
George.
Yes.
Steve.
Yes.
Dave.
Yes.
Lorraine.
Yes.
Susanna.
Yes.
Kristen.
Yes.
Aaron.
Yes.
Kathy.
Yes.
Emily.
Yes.
John.
Yes.
O'Henny.
Yes.
Scott.
Yes.
Christine.
Yes.
JJ.
Yes.
Mr. Chair, there's a hand.
I see. Katie, you have something to add?
Mr. Chair, if there's nothing that you need us for the rest of your agenda, could we adjourn our meeting so some of our members could leave?
Absolutely. Please do.
Okay, so do we have a motion to adjourn the select board meeting at 8:39?
So moved.
Second.
Okay,
Thank you for joining us, Melinda,
we
Mike.
got to do a roll call. So, Mr.
Oh,
Doyle.
sorry. I keep forgetting.
I see Arthur say yes. Mike Zulus,
Yes.
Melinda Collins,
Yes.
and myself, yes. Okay, so the select board meeting's adjourned. Some of us might stay just to listen to your discussion.
Before you go, Chair wants to thank both Katie Conlon and Melinda Collins for the work that you've done in these last several years, particularly during COVID, And Melinda, when you chaired the select board, you both have been exceptional public servants. And on behalf of the Warrant Committee, thank you for everything you've done and the contributions that I know as residents and citizens of the town that you will continue to make.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. You might have us back with you to talk about Algerine Corner at your next meeting.
We will, but
Very
since
kind
you're
words.
all here, I wanted to be on the record to thank you again because the work that you do, that you've done, and that you're going to continue to do because we're not out of the woods yet, is very helpful and exceptional. So again, thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr.
All right.
Chair.
Good night. We'll see you.
Thank you, members.
Okay, back to Article 3. Here we go. This is authorizing the town to enter into compensating balance agreements. Do we have a motion to accept?
So moved.
So moved.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Any discussion needed? Hearing none. Lynn, please take the roll.
George,
Yes.
Steve,
Yes.
Dave,
Yes.
Maureen,
Yes.
Susanna,
Yes.
Kristen,
Yes.
Erin,
Yes.
Kathy,
Yes.
Emily,
Yes.
John,
Yes.
O'Henny,
Yes.
Scott,
Yes.
Christine,
Yes.
JJ.
Yes.
Excellent. Thank you very much. Article 5 is the union wage set aside. Lynn, do you want to post that? Oh. Here we go. Actually, I guess it's Article 6, is it?
Yep.
Okay, right. Okay. Do we have a motion?
So moved.
Second? Anyone?
Second.
Any discussion? There's really nothing here to talk about as it's been settled. Lynn, please take the roll.
George,
Yes.
Steve, Steve,
Lynn, keep going. We still have a quorum.
Dave,
Yes.
Lorraine,
Yes.
Susanna,
Yes.
Kristen,
Yes.
Erin,
Yes.
Kathy,
Yes.
Emily,
Yes.
John,
Yes.
O'Henny,
Yes.
Scott,
Yes.
Christine,
Yes.
JJ.
Yes.
Thank you very much. Our next article to vote on, we've actually voted on the retirement board cost of living increase. This is for the recommendation. Lynn, do you want to flash this up?
Yes, just give me 1 second, George.
Take your time. You're doing great. As I've said so often, we couldn't do what we've been doing these last 2+ years without you being good at this.
Second that.
Okay, we actually already voted on the article to raise the base amount from 15,000 to 18,000. We're voting on the recommendation, which is before you. Do we have a motion to accept this as presented?
So moved.
We have a second.
Second.
Do we have any further discussion? Hearing none, Lynn, please take the roll.
George,
Yes.
Steve,
Yes.
Dave,
Yes.
Lorraine,
Yes.
Susanna,
Yes.
Kristen,
Yes.
Erin,
Yes.
Kathy,
Yes.
Emily,
Yes.
John,
Yes.
O'Henny,
Yes.
Scott,
Yes.
Christine,
Yes.
JJ.
Yes.
Thank you very much. The next article is the community preservation funds, which again, we have voted on here. We're looking at the vote for the recommendation to make sure everybody's on board with the language. Lynn, whenever you're ready.
George, I don't believe I have the correct one. I'm going to ask the committee skip this one, please.
Okay, if we don't have the, I don't want to do the incorrect language, so we'll defer this to another meeting. We have three more meetings anyway. We should be able to get through this all. Okay, do we have the proper language for the rest of them? The cemetery revolving fund, the use of revolving funds, and the authorization for the select board to accept easements?
Mr. Chair, you have a hand raised.
I see that. I'm not recognizing it until I have an answer to my question, though.
Got it.
George, yes, I believe we do for the rest of them.
Okay, good. As long as we have those. Kathleen, you're recognized.
I just wanted to say that the language that was shown was the language that we had sent.
Thank you, Ms. O'Donnell. I was actually just waiting for confirmation from Kevin Freytag. If he blessed it, then I guess that it's okay to use.
Yeah, because the only thing that we would have changed at all would have been the numbers themselves, and we inserted the numbers, and that is the language that he had approved.
Okay, thank you for clarifying.
Okay, if that's the case, then we can move to a vote. Because Kathleen, those were the numbers that we had already seen. Is that accurate? You haven't changed anything, I'm hoping.
No, we have not.
Okay, that's fine. In which case, if that is the language, and we'll just verify it with Kevin before we actually send it to the press, but I just want to be sure that we do it. We'll take the vote and we'll move on that, because if we have to revote, as I say, we still have 3 meetings to do it. So this is as presented. The chair will entertain a motion to accept and recommend to town meeting.
So moved.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Further discussion, any questions? Hearing none, Lynn, please take the roll.
George?
Yes.
Steve?
Yes.
Dave? Lorraine?
Keep going, Lynn, yeah.
Yes. Susanna?
Yes.
Kristen?
Yes.
Emily?
Yes.
Kathy?
Yes.
Erin?
Yes.
John?
Yes.
O'Henny?
Abstain.
Scott?
Abstain.
And Christine?
Yes.
And JJ?
Okay, JJ.
Yes.
Okay, I think that does pass even with the abstentions. Lynn, would you put up the next one, the cemetery revolving fund? Okay, this is very self-explanatory. Do we have a motion?
Second.
No, we have to have the motion first. I didn't hear the motion.
So moved.
Okay, do we have a second?
Second.
Second.
Thank you. Any discussion?
Yes, I have a question.
Go ahead, Christine, you have the floor.
Did the cemetery come back and talk to us about this and I missed that meeting?
They did talk about it at their meeting. They brought this up. There was not a specific, I don't think they came back and talked to us specifically about this $40,000. Short answer.
So when I went to meet to go over their budget,
Yeah.
I can't remember her name. The woman who runs the cemetery was telling me about this, and
Yeah.
she indicated that they were coming back and to talk about it, but she was confused as to whether it was us or select board. And just so everybody's clear, this is to take some money out of the money that would normally go into the general fund,
Right.
and use it to do maintenance on a house.
The abutting property.
Right. I was wondering why it's an interesting situation.
Well, she did bring it up. She talked about this. She talked about the dollar figure. This is a question to set it up as a separate accounting device. This is to keep track of what is spent so the funds won't be commingled, is my understanding.
He was talking about they needed to do a significant amount of repair to make it rentable.
Yes, yes. And I think this is the figure that they came up with, limited to $40,000, which I think if they can do it is great.
Well, I mean, for me, you know, it raised a lot of questions with regard to why the cemetery owns a house. But I don't know that it's a good idea or a bad idea. She indicated that it was a really good incentive for the last administrator. She didn't particularly need it. They needed to keep the house in good repair. And I thought that's weird.
No, I understand the question, but my understanding is it's been something that has been the residence of the cemetery superintendent for many years and now being used as a rental property. Apparently some repairs need to be made. She did talk to us about that. And this is what we're coming up with. I can't answer the questions that you're legitimate.
I think it's worth a conversation, but
okay, if that's the case, does anybody else feel that way? We can defer a vote on this and ask Lisa or Hearn to just give us some more details on this.
Mr.
George,
Chairman,
can
I thought
Yes.
we asked the question that was anybody else doing this in town with town property renting it out, and she was going to get back to us, I thought, and I never heard anything back.
Yeah, if there are pending questions, there's no problem in asking her to either respond to us in writing or to have her come back. Lynn, you have the floor.
George, I just wanted to point out that she came to our 3-9 meeting,
Yeah.
and this was voted on in favor of at that meeting. It's just the recommendation that we did not have at the time.
Okay, I guess I'm drawing a blank. I thought we voted on the cemetery appropriation, but you may be right. I didn't realize that we had put this into it as well.
okay. No, I probably missed that meeting, so
That's not a problem, not your legitimate question, and thank you for asking it, but I'll go back to my notes. I know we voted on, I thought we voted on the budget. If this was in that, then Lynn, you're the keeper of the keys and you know better than I do at this point to keep track of it. So if that's the case, then we're just looking at the recommendation here. Do you want to flash it up again?
Sure.
Okay. Do we have a motion to accept the recommendation and recommend to town meeting?
So moved.
Do we have a second? Do we have a second?
Second.
Thank you. No further discussion. Lynn, please take the roll.
George,
Yes, sorry.
Steve,
No.
Dave,
Yes.
Lorraine,
Yes.
Susanna,
Yes.
Kristen,
Yes.
Erin,
No.
Kathy,
No.
Emily, John,
Yes.
O'Henny,
No.
Scott,
No.
Christine,
abstain.
JJ.
No.
Okay, how do we stand on this vote?
I have 1 abstain and 6 nays.
So it does not pass. Okay, right now we're not recommending it to town meeting. What do we need, if anything, to bring forward to get us to the point where we could actually bring this to town meeting with the recommendation? Christine, you have your hand up.
Yeah, again, I wasn't here when it was discussed or when we listened to her. She explained her arguments and they had merit. I think it begs the question: is this the best use of what would ultimately go into the town's general funds. It may be, there's a lot of equity in the property. It may not make
Yep.
sense.
No, I get it. We'll, it's very simple. We'll just ask her to come back and answer these questions, at which point we can reconsider. Steve, you have the floor.
Yeah, I'd just like to know what the liability for the town is if we're fixing up a house and we're gonna rent it out.
Yeah.
Probably
That's
want
a
to
decent, I think that's a decent question too. So Lynn, can we make a point to ask Lisa Ahern to come back possibly to our next Monday meeting? If she's available, and answer these questions, and then if we want, we'll reconsider.
Okay, George.
Okay, thank you. Okay, next. Sorry, I'm just going through here. The authorization of the use of revolving funds. Again, this is kind of boilerplate. If you want to throw that up, Lynn.
Yes.
Okay, here we go. This outlines the responsibilities and the purposes for the funds and the limits. Again, this is something that is evident we do every year, et cetera, et cetera. So the chair will entertain a motion to recommend this to town meeting.
So moved.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Any questions or concept, comments, et cetera? Hearing none, Lynn, please take the roll.
George,
Yes.
Steve,
Yes.
Dave,
Yes.
Lorraine,
Yes.
Susanna,
Yes.
Kristen,
Yes.
Erin,
Yes.
Kathy,
Yes.
Emily,
Yes.
John,
Yes.
O'Henny,
Yes.
Scott,
Yes.
Christine,
Yes.
JJ.
Yes.
Very good. Thank you very much. The last one for this evening is the authorization to recommend to town meeting for the select board to accept easements. Lynn, if you want to throw that up, that would be great. Here we go. We do this every year. So here's the article and the recommendation. Does the chair will entertain a motion to accept this and recommend it to town meeting?
So move.
We have a second. Thank you. Any discussion? Lynn, please take the roll.
George,
Yes.
Steve,
Yes.
Dave,
Yes.
Lorraine,
Yes.
Susanna,
Yes.
Kristen,
Yes.
Erin,
Yes.
Kathy,
Yes.
Emily,
Yes.
John,
Yes.
O'Henny,
Yes.
Scott,
Yes.
Christine,
Yes.
JJ.
Yes.
Excellent. Thank you very much. We've already taken care of the minutes. Is there any new business? Oh, Katie. Hi, Katie. You have the floor.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. I think I heard an incorrect number on the union wage set aside article that you voted. I think you voted 0. I didn't get back to my Zoom in time, but the number is actually $343,460. That's on page 3 of Anne Marie Fagan's budget presentation tonight. There's a set aside for the union. There's a separate chapter 13 set aside, but that's a different article that I don't see on your agenda. But the amount under that article for the union wage set aside should be $343,460.
Yeah, Lynn, throw that up just to make sure that we didn't miss something. I think we voted the text, and whatever comment there was. That's which article? Let me go back. That is the, here we are. This is what we voted.
Yeah, so if it's a no appropriation be made, then what's proposed under budget
Yeah.
is 343.
Yeah, that's exactly what we have. So I don't think that's in conflict, is it?
No, it is. You would need to appropriate the 343, 460.
Okay. We don't have the appropriate language then. And I'm wondering why that didn't make it in there, if that's the case.
George, I think I just sat down with Anne Marie the other day to discuss boilerplate non-budget articles. I think I might have just misheard this particular one. My apologies to the committee.
Okay, not a problem. What we'll do then, thank you, Katie, very much for catching that. For this union wage set aside, let's take a reconsideration of that once we have the drafting properly in hand. Thank you for bringing that up. So we'll consider that in a subsequent meeting with the corrected language and the correct figure. So we're just making a note to that effect, and we'll make sure that that happens. Got it. Okay. Put that down and we'll have it redrafted so we get the proper language. All right, if that's the case and we're done with the articles at hand right now, our next meeting is scheduled for Wednesday, and I believe we are in person for the first time in, well, a long time. So we'll be in the conference room at the town hall at the blue conference room downstairs in the basement at 7. And if there is no other business, the chair will entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
We have a second?
Second.
All in, Lynn, please, I'll be able to say that on Wednesday, all in favor. Lynn, please take the roll.
George?
Yes.
Steve?
Yes.
Dave?
Yes.
Lorraine?
Yes.
Susanna?
Yes.
Kristen?
Yes.
Erin?
Yes.
Kathy?
Yes.
Emily?
Yes.
John?
Yes.
Oh, Henny?
Yes.
Scott?
Yes.
Christine?
Yes.
JJ?
Yes.
That's it, George.
Thank you all very much. All of our guests, and for those of you who are in studio, thank you for joining us and for your input. And to the membership, again, my very deep thanks for your hard work and time. Good night, and we'll see you Wednesday.
Thank you. Good night.